Hey Danny, how you doing?
Great. Hey, Rod.
Thanks for jumping on, man. I've been excited to talk to you. I think this topic we're going to cover today, which is basically not focusing so much on leads and more on the systems that handle those leads is and not only think it's a huge mistake a lot of people make, but I think it's taken from your business from a certain level to the next level, not to mention, increasing profits and all those good things. So before we jump into that, I'd love to hear more, maybe share your background and kind of, how you originally got into flipping and some of the things you've done in the past.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I can make this story last for a really long time, so I'm going to try to make it be a little bit quicker. But I was working a corporate job as a software engineer. I just come out of college with a computer science degree and everything. So I was working for a defense contractor in San Antonio, and it was just kind of like it wasn't a challenging job. It wasn't, exciting, and I kind of was pretty disappointed in it. And at that time, my father had started flipping houses, and he was just so excited. Like he just was a different person. He was like, just super excited about every single day, telling me about all the stuff that he was doing and the houses he was buying and the money he was making. And I just had this urge to also try that, and I didn't do it right away. I got I don't know if he gave it to me or someone else gave it to me, but I don't even remember who it was. It may have been, what's his name, Lionel Scruggs or somebody. It was somebody doing cold calling. Now, this is back in probably 2002,
Okay.
2001, 2002. So it was, I think it was even on VHS tapes, right? So it's like this
Okay.
guy's doing cold calling. So the tapes even were like older than, whatever. I don't know how old those tapes were. And I was watching this guy's asking people, doing all these creative offers and stuff over the phone, cold calling people. And I said, I don't want to have any part of this. This does not seem, especially because I'm pretty introverted for the most part. And especially then I was even more so. So I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is not something that I want to do regarding at least that way. So I kept those VHS tapes in the box and didn't really do anything for a little bit. And, but then I got to the point where I'd saved up some money and I was going to do a trip overseas and just have some fun or whatever. And I said, I just felt bad about, just spending that money instead of investing or being smart with it. And so I decided to buy a HUD home. And I was like, well, this is a good way to get a good deal because I can get the advantage because, HUD houses sell, the FHA foreclosures sell, they give a lot of times they'll give that window for someone wanting to live in the house an option to buy it before investors can make offers on it.
Right.
Right. So you kind of beat that competition. And I got a really great deal on a house and I bought that and fixed it up and lived in that. And while I was doing that, I started buying other houses. So I did profit from that one after about 3 years. I sold it and made, I think, 40 or 50,000. And it was great because I lived there long enough to where, that those gains weren't taxed.
That's great.
Um, and
Yeah.
so that was pretty amazing. And I loved it. But I was already starting to buy at that point too, other houses. And I remember being super frustrated looking for those first deals. And I know anybody out there that's new or that's in the middle of this, how painful that is. And I remember thinking, when I was talking to my dad about like, it's so easy for you to get these deals. I can't find a single one. Why is that? And now looking back, I know a lot of it's, mindset. It's the mental
Absolutely.
aspect of it. But then I didn't understand that very well. And he said, well, you got to just keep, turning over rocks, turning over rocks. You got to keep just hunting. And thankfully I didn't give up. But one thing I did go through is, the transition from, I was hunting MLS deals. And so I'd spent all this time researching these deals, these houses that are on the MLS listed through realtors. And I'd go and make appointments and see those houses and I make an offer. By the time I got around to making an offer on them, they were saying highest and best because the market was pretty hot back then, back in 2003, 4 or 5,
That's right. Yeah.
before the
We're
crash.
exactly.
And so that was miserable. I was like, man, I just wasted all this time, all week, getting this together, these 10 or 15 offers, only to find out that I wasn't going to be able to get them, people were beating me to them. My offers were too low, all that kind of stuff. There's some people that thrive on that. They know it's a big numbers game and they just go, and they'll make a ton of MLS offers and get some. But I was like, there's got to be a smarter way. I mean, there's got to
Right.
be
And where
a,
where is this? Is this in Texas?
in San Antonio, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And um, and so I started, going directly to seller. I was like, okay, I got to get over this whole thing about being introverted, not wanting to talk to actual homeowners, and just go for it. I got to put my phone number out there on a bandit sign on a telephone pole, and yeah, that was fun. I mean, yeah, I
That's
was so nervous. I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning at like 5 o'clock and go out and do that when there's no traffic, way back then. And getting those first calls, I was so nervous. But to kind of speed up the talk a little bit, that was a big transition. Finally, talking to sellers and putting houses under contract directly from sellers was just the way to go. I mean, I just fell in love with it. It was nice to come to somebody's house and them telling you, oh, thank you so much for being here. I didn't know what I was going to do.
right.
And, you're helping me out, and it switched my mindset because I had a little bit of a feeling of, is this taking advantage of people? And it's
Right.
like, you got to get over that, because you'll find out that no, these people want to do things this way. They're not stupid. They know they're not making as much as they could had they fixed it up and spent the time to sell it. But most of them don't have the means or even desire, for really the bigger point, the desire to do that. They're okay with selling it quickly. And several years in, with one of the properties, once the market kind of turned in 2008, I remember a house where I was the motivated seller, and I was like, I got to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
And I was willing to, I knew I could make more if but I was so done. I was just like, my energy is going towards this frustration. I need to be done with it. And yeah.
No, it's a whole nother discussion. I know we're not going to go down that path, but just the mindset, you especially when you start, I think you think you have to know all these tips and tricks and strategies and all this stuff. And if most of us didn't do it when we started either, but just focusing on the mindset is huge, because you feel like, this, to get a really good deal, you think you have to take advantage of another person. But the reality is that's not the way it works. It's like you could be really helping someone out of a tight spot. And then the other thing I always kind of put in my mind and tell people is, look, you don't know what's going to happen in 2 months, especially now more than, we've seen in the last decade. Is, there's a lot of pressure on, kind of a downward pressure on values. So, you're really, getting a really good deal is protecting yourself. It's not taking advantage of anyone, because you could be making, it could be a home run for them based on what's going on in the market. So
Yeah.
The mindset stuff is key.
Yeah. There's been times, because we got to the point where we're doing about like 60 plus deals a year. And, there was a time where sometimes we'd have some dry spells. I go 2 months without putting something in contract, and I'd start getting negative, thinking there's too much competition now. There's too many other investors doing this. And I'd start thinking that way. And I'd have to catch myself and say, I can't, no, I'm starting to think that way. I got to stop. It's not true. I will find more deals. I just got to keep going. And I'm telling you, and then like within a day or two, I'm getting stuff on a contract. And it's just, it's a power of belief, and
Sure.
most things are really faith and belief and stuff. So, if you find yourself thinking that way, you got to take care of that first, right? That's the first way to turn around
100%.
your lead flow problem. But, working up what we did to generate from lots of different marketing campaigns and different things, we started generating a ton of leads and doing deals really consistently. At some point, I think it was about 2010, we had gone on vacation, and I decided during that vacation that I wanted to take flying lessons when we got back. So got back, started taking flying lessons, and all, my business kind of suffered because I was just wrapped up. I wanted to get that pilot's license as quick as possible and do it within 2 months. And I did, but I was still getting leads while I was doing that, even though I wasn't doing a whole lot of marketing or other things, because kind of what we're experiencing now is what the results of all the work we put in 3 months ago, for the most part. And so once that 3 months elapsed and I had my license, I was flying around having fun, I was like, wait a minute, my leads are drying, but I wasn't super motivated. I just wanted to play like I was retired and have fun, but I knew that wasn't sustainable for too long. And so I decided to start blogging because I needed some accountability. I had somebody I was meeting with for goal accountability kind of meetings. And I was like, it'd be cooler to have a blog started where I could have, say what I'm doing, right? Because I said I would do that this week, and I'm going to come back and post and report if I did or not, and show people, what I'm doing every day, what marketing I'm doing, what calls I got, why were they selling, how much did I offer, why did I not offer something, which appointments I went on and why, all that kind of stuff. And then whenever I got deals, I would explain, here's the before and after and all that kind of stuff. Because really at the time, there were TV shows right about flipping back then,
Right.
in 2010, 2011. Flip This House, I think maybe was the only one. And there were blogs out there, and really it was like, especially with the blogs, there was either people showing the rehab, right? They didn't talk about how they got the deal or anything like that, or maybe
right.
there was nothing about where this came from, which everybody really wanted to know that, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's cool that you're rehabbing and you're making this beautiful house, but man, how did you get that deal? And then there were other sites that were just talking about the here's 5 different marketing techniques you can use. But then they weren't explaining in real world terms of, I did this and here's the result.
Right. How'd you
Right?
structure it? How'd you finance it? How'd you, do the,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I started blogging about that, and I did 34 weeks of that until my son was born and had to just take a break. It was a lot of work. And during that time, and the blog was flippingjunkie.com. That's still available on flippingjunkie.com. But and I was posting that on Bigger Pockets, which was really big. And the big thing that came from that was the numbers. I look back, most of the leads came through from my website, right? So maybe put a link to my website or something on the show notes page or something. But I still get a lot of leads.
I'll definitely provide that. And you're talking about the blog.
Yeah, and the blog itself, and what that showed people, though, because I was actually saying, this week, how many leads generated from what sources, right? And then total cumulative over this time period, how many have been generated total. And at the end of that 34 weeks, I think it was 495 leads, motivated seller leads, where people were saying, hey, I want an offer.
Just from hearing about how you're doing that with other people. Cause I guess I would be a little reluctant, or, this is getting out of our own ways as far as, not wanting to share everything you're doing, but you're basically telling like a potential seller, direct seller, how you're doing other deals, right?
Yeah, but they weren't finding that blog. I mean, they weren't.
They weren't. Okay. So this is a landing page type website.
Yeah, this was the
Gotcha.
website that I still have. Yeah.
Okay.
And my house buying website. So it's different from the blog. Yeah, definitely not sending people to that.
That
I
makes
wasn't
sense.
putting all, yeah, because I don't want them to think, I mean, it was all anonymous. I didn't put people's names or addresses or anything.
Right.
For those leads that came in. I was just giving the gist of what they were. And there's some funny ones, right? I mean, you generate that many leads, you're gonna have some funny phone calls. You're gonna have some funny situations and stuff.
And some angry. I at one point I was doing those where we'd take pictures of the front of the house and say, hey, basically showing the house. And then I'd had guys yelling at me saying, hey, my kids are out front playing. What are you stalking my house or whatever? And it was one of those like Zillow, images or something, or I'm not Zillow, but Google Maps images. And I'm just like, oh shoot, I don't know about this.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah. So there's some fun stuff there in those that came up through there. And I turned that into a book, and that's actually on Amazon, called Flipping Houses Exposed. It's really the blog post. It's been edited since after the release. I basically put all those blog posts in the book the way they were, but then edited it maybe, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I edited it though to make it a little bit more readable, and right, just a little bit. And so, but I've had several people, including, Bill Allen from Seven Figure Flipping, good friend of mine, told me that that's what gave him his start. He had read that book on a trip, and he was like, he saw, and the thing that I'm bringing that up for is because he said what it did was show me how much of a numbers game it really was. That Definitely. If you could go and you put that many offers in, or get that many calls and put this many offers in, that you're going to do these deals. It's just going to happen, and it can be set up to be repeated, right? Like it's something that can really turn into a nice machine. And so that was all great, and I felt on top of the world. Like, all these people are telling me they got their starts from this book, and it helped them see, that, it really is a numbers game, and it truly is. But, over the last, 5 or 6 years, I'd looked back and I was looking at, how many deals did I do though? It's like, I did deals, but I think it was like a total of like, was it like 11 or 13 deals out of 495 leads? And I'm like, that is atrocious.
Yeah.
That was not good. So I was killing myself generating all these leads, and only turning in 11, I think it was like 1 out of 20 or something like that was becoming a deal. Was like point, was it 2% or whatever?
Yeah.
It's such a low amount. And the reason is, if you've ever seen those sales stats, I didn't realize this until several years ago, or maybe a year ago. So, but the sales stats talk about people looking to buy something, right? They're in different levels of being ready to buy. And we know we're talking about sellers selling houses, but it still fits. It fits the generally accepted stats for sales. And they say that, people are typically 3% are typically ready to buy, right? They'll buy. And I was dealing with the 3% of sellers ready to sell, right away, that were becoming my deals. And that was roughly the same numbers. I think it was 2.2%, not 3%.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But the sales stats also talk about there's really 40% that will buy, which in our case is sell their house over enough time.
Right.
Right. And so, wow, there's the missing piece, right? What is happening after the fact? And I was following up maybe a call for a week or something, most leads that were pretty decent. But then it was it because I had more leads coming in, I had more marketing to do. I couldn't be bothered with people I felt like weren't motivated.
And then you focus on that 1, 2, 3%, and you kind of ultimately end up forgetting about that other, 40%.
Right. And the thing is, we need some more leads. We're not doing enough deals. We need more leads. Because I know that, I'll get those. And it reads in those blog posts of that book, where I'm saying next all the time. That was my mentality. Next, next, next. Oh man, that was okay then maybe, but not anymore. Like that's not going to keep you going. The cost of these leads is going to put you out of business if you just keep turning them down instead of turning them into deals. And so that's been my big, heavy focus since then is, creating systems to do that, to make sure that we turn as many of those leads that come in into deals over time, right? Still generate new leads, of course, but now the focus isn't as much on what new, whiz bang campaign can I do that had the big hype right now, doing the cold calling or the texting or, this list stacking, all this kind of stuff that gets all the hype. All the guys that I know that have been doing tons of deals consistently for years, they don't have all that fancy stuff. They know what works. They just keep doing it.
Right.
Right. And it's simple. It's not convoluted. It's not, I'm going to find this list nobody else has. No, it's
that's another trap we get into at some point, is just either trying to do too much or trying to get too cute for our own good.
Right.
So people kill me if I don't ask this question. I want to get into the systems side of it, but so when you were generating all those leads, was it primarily just SEO, website stuff? What were you focused on at that time? I know you said you kind of transitioned from MLS to direct seller, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I did that early on, and then the generating all those leads was mostly from the website. So I had started doing SEO and things like that to generate those leads. I was not doing paid ads, I don't think, during those 34 weeks. It was all just organic, SEO traffic. And other things came from direct mail, I think was another big one. And I was doing bandit signs even then too. Okay. And then we had Yellow Pages ad. That was a thing even, like still then, the good Yellow Pages ad was generating some leads. So
in 2010, roughly, is that?
Yeah, 2010. Yeah. I think that was all around 2010. Yeah.
And then I'm curious, fast forward to now, would you still recommend those? So it's bandit signs, it's SEO primarily, and then direct mail. Are you still kind of doing those things now?
Yeah. And actually, really right now, it's just, I'm just the website. The website is the only thing, because I'm also focused on software that helps with the focus of, how to turn these leads into deals. And so most of my time is actually spent with my team and I working on that, the CRM system. And so I just have the website. So I'm not doing any work to generate leads, but I still get leads through the website. So it's something that takes time to build up. But once you do, I'm sure you've heard it, and it just can bring you the leads and deals for time to come. And so that's been really nice.
And by the way, I'll put all this in show notes, but your site, Danny Sells Houses, is really good.
Danny Buys Houses.
Yeah,
Danny Buys Houses.
Yeah, it's DannyBuysHouses.com, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's a good sample for people to kind of check out and see how you do it, because I think becoming more personable, and family oriented, I think just showing that to a would-be seller is huge versus, because I think the angst sense when I get in some of those meetings, those face-to-face, is like their guards up really high because they think you're just there to basically steal their property.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the other piece that, you know, there's ways to systematize your business with how you're dealing with leads. And when I say systematize, I don't mean, you know, pull yourself completely out of it. I don't mean have, you know, a team or automations handle everything for you. It's more of making sure that you do things in a consistent way that's well, if not documented, set up. You know, documented is great, right? You have systems documented. If nobody's using those documents, it doesn't matter. It's not really. Your system needs to be something that's repeated over and over again. And the reason for that is because over time, as things happen and things evolve, you've set things up to run. You notice when something is not working as well as it could be, and you tweak it. That's where the benefit comes in over time, because you're making sure that machine runs better and better over time. And an example of that is like follow-up. So we do automated follow-up sequences. Forefront CRM has that, you know, built in out of the box. You can get some and you can tweak them. And I recommend tweaking them because over time, once you have it's not just the ability to send out these so that you're top of mind for sellers over time. It's that if you notice that people are responding a lot to a certain message, you might want to move that up in your chain or do something, because it's clicking with people because they're responding to it, right? And the other side of that is if you're getting a lot of people that are getting pissed off after getting a certain message, what are you going to do? You're going to change that message, right? Change either the timing of it or, you know, the way it's worded or whatever it is. And so that over time, you've got something that's really producing results and getting people to respond. Now, the whole purpose of follow-up isn't to convince somebody to finally respond to you and sell to you. We're not convincing anybody with those. I mean, you're building rapport, maybe, like some of them could send a testimonial or something, but really all you're doing is staying top of mind and staying in the mind of the seller, because it's going to be time and circumstances for them on their own time, their own circumstances that are going to cause them to think, yes, now I'm ready to sell. Right? You're not going to do that through text messages. You're not going to do that through phone calls. You're not going to do that with letters. You know, there might be a couple people that you might that might say, "Oh, you're so convincing," but you know, really, for the most part, nobody gives a crap. Everybody's too busy, got too much going on, too much information coming in. Right. And it's really just, you know, if it's 5 months from the time that you made an offer and something happens in their personal situation where they're like, you know what, I need to get rid of this property now. I thought I was going to do something. I can't. I just need to get rid of it. Oh, and Danny, yeah, he's been still asking me if I still have it. Right. You know, so I'm going to give him a call. I don't feel like, now that I'm like in this place, I don't feel like looking up other people again. I already dealt with him. I liked him. And, you know, I'm going to call him back, or I'm going to text him back or whatever. And that's all we're going for. And with enough people in your system having that, you know, going out and happening, you know, that's where, you know, those leads become deals without a whole lot of effort.
Yeah. So that's a huge nugget you mentioned a minute ago about just tweaking. I think, you know, you set up a system and you've got to be measuring, you've got to be looking at analytics, and you've got to be continually tweaking. And to me, those are like, that's a game changer as far as, you know, return on that investment, whatever your lead gen strategy is. So I want to get into Forefront and just kind of what you're doing on that. But before we get there, you know, what should people be thinking about that don't have kind of a structured system to manage the deal flow of their business? What does that typically look like? Or what do you think, you know, some of the more successful guys are doing in that regard?
Yeah. So how you set it up depends on where you're at, right? I mean, if you're not generating leads, you know, what do you have a system for? Like, you know, you got to be generating leads, and don't get in the whole thing of, you know, setting up software and stuff before you get started. Don't do it. It's like, you know, all your energy should be spent on trying to just get people to call you, and that's it. Like, just do that, and then worry about the rest. Now, if you're already generating leads and you're thinking like, well, what kinds of systems do I need to set up? Well, let's think about, instead of, you know, telling you get this software, get that software, it's not going to help you as much as saying, what are the key points where people are dropping the ball with leads? Like, where are the holes in my bucket from before when I generated all those leads, but only got that many deals? What was happening? And when we do that, the first point is when they contact you. Okay. Especially if you're doing any website stuff, you might get people submit a lead and then you can't get a hold of them, right? You're getting ghosted. Or if you miss a call because you're at an appointment, and then you can't get a hold of them. Maybe they talk to another investor. They're just kind of being a little bit hard to get a hold of at that point. Maybe they got cold feet, whatever it is. Before, I'd be so busy with stuff that I would just forget those, right? I might try to call them back tomorrow or whatever, put them in my notebook for the next day, because everything was kind of going into my notebook at that point. If you're on a budget, have a spreadsheet, a separate spreadsheet. If you can afford a CRM, get that, because it's going to help you organize it much better with a lot less effort. But if you need to do the spreadsheet, and the thing is, that's separate from all your leads, right? Because these are people that reached out to you that you've not gotten a hold of. And I'm telling you, most investors, most of your competition are not doing that. And so when you finally do get a hold of them, if you do get a hold of them in say 2 or 3 weeks, they're probably not talking to anybody else.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so it's worth it. So that's one of the places you want to plug that hole, make sure leads don't slip through there, because those leads could be a deal. And as well as I do, you got to treat each of these calls and leads as that home run deal that you've been waiting for, because you never know which one it's going to be. It only takes one, right? You get a 100K, return on something, or you get like a, $50,000 wholesale deal, could happen. That call, that's how you have to treat it. And so including these kinds of things. So
that's actually great. The great point is when someone originally reaches out, if they're searching online, they could get just pounded by a bunch of, flippers trying to, get their deal in contract. And then if it doesn't happen for whatever reason, they're not ready, or, it's a situational thing. The ones who stay in touch, and, we're all trying to generate a bit of a relationship, so they kind of know and trust you. But if you stay in front of them, when they call you down the road, when they're really ready, like you say, those 10 other guys that they talked to at the beginning aren't calling them back or staying in touch or developing kind of, ongoing relationship. If you're, kind of telling your story and whatnot, whether it's, emails or, voice drops, whatever it is. But when they call you, man, that's a really good lead to try and convert versus being one of many at the table.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Because that's when it's tough. And that also reminded me of another thing, is that, it's the speed to talking to that person. If you're not answering your calls live, if you're sending stuff to voicemail, you're going to have a problem with some of these not being able to get a hold of them for a long time, and you kind of lose out. You could be getting those deals, because typically whoever talks to the person first has an advantage. It's not something measurable, but there's an advantage to that. And so making sure that there's somebody that can answer those calls is huge. If you are too busy and you're finding that you're missing these calls because you're talking to another seller, whatever it is, just hire somebody part-time that a relative or somebody that's friendly, that works from home and that can answer the call, that can be there to answer those calls, and have them do it, right? Because you got to just be able to answer those calls. But
that's actually a great idea, is just, even if you're just starting out and it's just getting somebody, just a live body to answer and try and take some data for you. I was going to say, I had a Google Voice number when I was generating a lot of leads, and it would pop up because it would roll over from Google Voice to my cell, and it would pop up as hot lead. That'd be the so I'd know to basically drop everything and take that call.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also some, that brings up a good point too about phone numbers, right? You should be using a phone system somehow, right? Whether that be CallRail, whether that be, anything, smartphone, any of those things, and Forefront has phone numbers in it. And one of the reasons that is becoming more and more important these days is if you're using your cell phone and everything, and you're following up with people and texting them and stuff like that from your cell phone, you literally could have your cell phone start being marked as spam. And you just don't want to do that, right? I mean,
right.
Like it's your cell phone. Usually I have the same phone number I've had since I was 18. And I don't want to, lose that. I don't want to have to change that and stuff like that. So having those phone numbers, and then you can even track, you can set those phone numbers to be for specific marketing, so that if a call is coming in from this one, it's because of my website, or it's because of my letter, or it's because of whatever. You have context, and you can measure your campaigns better. But the other side of that is, if you have anybody else answering the phone, or even if it's still you answering the phone, with those kind of phone systems, especially with a CRM that would attach to those and hook up and link up with those, integrate with those, then you will know about all the calls that came in a centralized place, right? Because if it's your cell phone, you probably have a bunch of personal stuff coming in too. It's hard to tell what was what. right? And to know which ones
Absolutely.
were likely leads. So if you've got something, that puts these into a place where it's like, I can go back and make sure all this was dealt with, right? Because if we were busy, we're at an appointment, we're sitting at a table and getting a contract signed and somebody calls, you can't answer the phone. And if you did, you don't want to be on the phone. So you can say, I'll call you back. Well, you're so excited about the deal you signed up, you might not remember to, right? And then there's not a place to see all that stuff. So make sure that you take care of that kind of thing. That's the next part of the system. Inside of Forefront, we built this inbox because I was like, why are all these brand new leads that came in from like calls and stuff like that, along with all my other leads that I've already talked to sellers and stuff in the pipeline that we have on there? I want to know just what's come in that's not been dealt with. So we created an inbox so that I know if it's in here, it's not been dealt with. I didn't do anything with it. Nobody on my team did anything with it. So that, especially when you've got somebody else answering the phone or a lead intake or an acquisitions person that talks to people, if they're out and about taking calls, do you want to trust whether they returned all calls or dealt with all calls? Or do you want to have a place where you can see, hey, it's still in here. It means nobody did anything with it, right? Like it's
That's the
just
stuff you just have to know. Yeah.
yeah, because when you're doing things, some of the things that are more expensive, so you're doing Google ads and you're paying $300 to $500 a lead. If you miss one of them, that's just like burning, a lot of $500 bills. It's just not fun, not something you want to do.
Yeah, no, and that's the other thing as far as like, cost per lead. And, again, back to I don't know if I probably got this from like Dan Kennedy or somebody, but if you don't measure it, it basically doesn't matter. You're just, you're flushing it's either time, effort, money, whatever it is down the drain. If you're not, you're keeping track of everything that you do from the marketing side. Anytime you're spending money on something, well, that's not even totally true. Cause even if you're doing SEO, which I guess you are spending, but not like your, paid ads, you still, you want to be able to track those and maximize those as much as possible. So I'm very curious. I want to, have you maybe dive into Forefront, but as far as like, what's a starting point? You're starting to generate some leads, maybe you're spending money, maybe you're not, but what do you recommend for someone? Do you do something like a Forefront CRM out of the gates? Is there kind of the interim? You mentioned, spreadsheet, obviously that, you could always start loading stuff into spreadsheets. That honestly, it was never a great solution for me because I just felt like those things just grew beyond really being able to manage effectively. And then, out of sight, out of mind, at least for me. And, I'd never go back to those leads.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how many investors still have a stack of papers on their desk and that's their leads. It's just like when I got time, I'll sit down and I'll go through them. It's like, oh man, I've got so many leads back then when I did stuff like that where those papers turned yellow. They've been sitting there so long.
Right.
And then at that point, I was like, oh, well, these need to just go in the trash at this point. But, and so having something like, a spreadsheet, if you don't have anything else and you don't want to get into doing the CRM thing, that'll work, but you'll probably find pretty quickly that okay, this is why I don't want to do this way. Now I can see the benefit of having a system like that. And a lot of people go through Podio, right? They'll get into a very cheap account in Podio and set that up and do things in there for a bit, and there's no problem with that. I think it's clunky and not real well suited to set up the systems that you can tweak. So we get a lot of people that come from Podio because they're like, we just tired of the clunkiness. We want something that looks good, that feels good, it has drag and drop that you can click and, you're not clicking 6 times to do something, you're clicking once or twice, things that have been designed for real estate investors. Because, once you're doing enough volume, those clicks get frustrating for even if it's somebody on your team that's doing it. And so I think having that transition to that, start with that stuff if you want to and then, if you experience that frustration, there's other stuff available. So, but if you're ready, if you're already doing some things and you're like, I need to make sure I don't let anything slip through the cracks, then, here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to sign up for something like Podio sometimes and find that you're becoming somebody that really just manages your software instead of investing in real estate, because then you find that you're fixing crap all the time. Right? That you're dealing with stuff for your team, you're dealing with setting stuff up. And it's like, next thing you know, it's like, why am I not buying houses? Why am I not making offers to sellers right now?
Such a good point. I mean, you and I've done this several times. It's funny. I, coach various investors and actually buddies that have other companies. And, it's just so easy to create just, a spider web of stuff that's just, is not efficient. You do, oh my gosh, what's the monkey one? Is it not Survey Monkey? Just the
MailChimp, like
MailChimp. I
MailChimp,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, MailChimp and spreadsheets and, all these different things. And then you can just create this thing that just becomes a behemoth to even manage. And you're in these should be tools to help you run your business. You end up spending so much time trying to manage the various things. So that's why I think, having a CRM that was basically purpose built from the beginning for this business is key.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I want to bring up the fact that, I was talking about before, it was 1 out of 45 leads becoming a deal. I think that's 2.2%. So 1 out of 40, it took 45 leads to get a deal before, and evolving, joining some mastermind groups and stuff like that, and really getting everything honed in, focusing on the systems of the business. We did get to the point where, there were points where we were getting about 1 out of 5 leads was becoming a deal. 1 out of 5 to 1 out of 7, I think, is what we pretty much averaged.
That's incredible.
So yeah, and that's 20%. So if you go back, I think it was, out of the 495 leads, that would have been close to 100 deals, instead of 13. Now, what would that have done, right, for the business? And so, obviously it wasn't just, having a system to manage that stuff. We did start having a team and having, dedicated people to answer the phone, acquisitions people that did sales training, for real estate investors, and other things helped that too. But, having that system there really helped us to get to that point. I think that for most investors, obviously, depending on lead source has an influence on this, but, I think that, you should be getting, 5 to maybe 10% is a good average for most real estate investors of the leads that you're getting should become deals. So if they're not, then there's room for improvement for sure.
So maybe share a little bit about the gist of Forefront. I mean, I know I'll send people to, and there's a nice video kind of walk through on the site and whatnot, but maybe, explain kind of what that does and, how, I guess, other successful investors are using it.
For sure. So our customers basically see it as like a hub for all their lead generation that they're doing through, different sources, if it's direct mail or website, or if they're using, like Deal Machine or Launch Control. A lot of people using Launch Control, things like that. They have the leads come from that system, those systems directly into Forefront through integrations and webhooks and stuff like that. So anytime they have a new lead, and even phone systems. So with our phone calls, you can set it to where a phone number, if you get a new call or a text or a new number, it'll create a lead from that in the system. So you have all the leads that come in from all these places. So they have all their qualified leads coming in, right? And that's an important point, because I think some people are confused about what a CRM typically is. And I know there's some systems out there where people are uploading giant lists, and they're like, I want to prospect these lists from the system. I want to do cold calling from this and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, that kind of stuff has been done really well with these other tools that already exist. Right. And they do really well at keeping your number circulated so that those calls can actually still happen. And text, like Launch Control, is amazing. I think the best at, being able to keep your text messages getting delivered when you're prospecting, because that is cold outreach, right? You're going to get the cell phone carriers are really cracking down on spam. And so a lot of that stuff is not going to get delivered anymore. So Forefront really is the hub for qualified leads. These are people that already are saying they're interested, right? That come into Forefront. That way, our phone numbers that you're using inside of there are working with people that already kind of expect communication from you, right? So you're keeping that really confidently, being able to have that stuff delivered and be able to communicate, follow up with those people and everything. And so the use is, people are checking their inbox inside of Forefront, because any new lead that came in from any of those sources is going to be in there. They don't have to go check all the different places, especially if the other people doing that prospecting for them. And then they know, and they can deal with that. They get notifications for new leads, and they jump in and they do something with it, move it out of the inbox and into their pipeline, and work it through their pipeline. They do, analysis, setting up appointments. The system helps them with, communicating with the seller before an appointment to make sure they show up, reminder messages and stuff like that are personalized, not just automated. We don't know who you are, but here's an automated message, automated messages. Because I know nothing is worse than going across town for an appointment and then nobody showing up.
Right.
And you're just like, man.
Yeah. It's the
And you're
worst.
calling them and like, oh, I totally forgot. It's like, oh, now I have to come back out because you still want to have the appointment. You just didn't show up because you
Right. And you
oh.
have to muster up being nice about it.
But had we sent that follow-up message, 2 hours before, hey, looking forward to the appointment, if they weren't going to make it, we could have heard back and said, hey, let's reschedule without going all the way out there. So, stuff like that's really cool and helpful. The other thing is automating status changes. So basically when a lead moves from one status to another, then you can have all kinds of stuff happen. And this is just great because this is how you set up your systems, right? My lead intake might handle that lead when it comes into the inbox, but then it needs to go to the acquisitions person that is going to be handling the appointment and everything. And so when they move it to that status automation can be set up to remove the lead intake from the lead as the assigned person and move it now to the acquisition person. And so if there's communication from the seller, that's the person that's going to get notified, not the lead intake anymore, because it's not their concern.
Right.
Right. And so this kind of stuff gets built out. Tasks get created based on the status it goes into. Right. So, if things are moving along and the person just goes in and looks at their task list, oh, I got to do these things, and it wasn't, I need to go look into this lead, figure out what I'm supposed to do, or follow some, convoluted process document.
Right.
That's going to have me checking all these places all the time. It's just kind of like there and they can work those leads. And then, and I'm greatly simplifying things because it's going to be too much for everybody to keep track of.
Sure.
And then the follow-up is the next stage, right? Because like we talked about, a lot of people aren't willing to sell right away. They're not going to sell right away. And so it's very easy just to take that lead, add it to a follow-up sequence, and that'll take information from the lead and personalize all the messages that are going to go out over time with that seller's information. So that they're getting messages that say, hey, good morning. This is Danny. Jan, have you done anything with that property yet?
Right.
Something like that.
And that's is that pre-scripted? It seems a little daunting to, and I'm actually dealing with that now is, some of these, these automated templates and these drip campaigns, the similar thing on the lending side even is, just.
Yeah, we have proven ones for cold leads. So these are basically sellers that are just tire kickers. That you maybe went to the appointment stuff and you're like, oh, these people are just looking for retail. So their messaging is going to be spread out in different ways for a lot further time because you don't want to, you just want to, just in case, right? So we have a whole series for that. We have a whole series for warm leads where you're kind of unsure whether they're motivated or not. And then we've got hot leads. And so you have these sequences that you get by default inside your account when you sign up. And then you can tweak those. So they're already there. You can start using them. And when you get time and you want to tweak them a little bit, you can go in and tweak them. Right. It's real simple. Or just duplicate what we gave you, the whole sequence, and modify it. That way you still have a copy of the old one. And then you can do things that way. What I like about what we've done with that as well is you can chain these things, which is amazing because you don't want to create a sequence that's 3 years long and then like create another one, but saying, you know what, this is really just this section of this other one. Now I got to recreate all those messages because it's a separate sequence. No, just create these things in their own sequence and then chain them. Because you can specify at the end of this, when it runs through this last message, what do you want Forefront to do? Well, run another sequence. Okay, well, which one? And then you have, so, what we can do is have hot sequence, right? A lot more messages closer together. Once that runs out, automatically go into warm, which will spread out more. And then after that, go into cold, right? And you can have that's close to over 2 years, I think, of messages already chained up, ready to go. There's other options for after sequence ends. You can have it go into manual follow-up, which will be, somebody on your team will have to call them or figure out what should we do with this. Maybe, that's where you can also, because you can have tasks as part of the sequence. So you get a task created at a certain part, like after 90 days, create a task for whoever to see if this was sold, right? Check the records, the count.
How about even like click-throughs and stuff like that? Get notified, person watch this, they click that kind of stuff, or?
Well, we don't have that. We don't have it attached to the website to know if they've, done these other things. Yeah, I mean, that's because they're not really coming back to the website unless you're driving them there with the link or something. But, that's been a little bit more tricky to do with the text stuff. Text have links in them. A lot of times they're being blocked.
Well, I'm curious your opinion on what type of messaging works best. And I assume the system will allow you to do, various things, whether it's, text, email,
Great question.
or
Yeah.
even
So
voice.
obviously text gets the best response, right? Calling or text. And we have the ability for email. And I think that's great for sending credibility building stuff, so because you can have the link, you have testimonials, you can have all that stuff in the email, which is a lot easier. And it's not as intrusive, right? And that's the other reason to have it. You don't want to just keep sending text to everybody because, over time but if the text is spread out enough, depending, again, it's like depending on their motivation, is what the text message is going to be about and what it's going to be like, right? Early on, we made that offer. I haven't heard from you. Are you still interested? Right. Always a question, right? Because you want a response, never just a statement. It needs to be a question. It needs to be short. It needs to be personalized, right? It should have their name or something in it that lets them think, hey, this is not automated. And it needs to come out at a time that's random, like 9:43 in the morning instead of 8 o'clock on the dot all the time. Right.
Yep.
And definitely not in the middle of the night. And so if you're getting sellers from different places like Hawaii or something, where the owner might live in Hawaii or the properties in your market, you want to be careful with that. And so our system, what it does is you can set the time zone of the seller so that the system will know, send this based on their time zone. Don't send it based on our time zone. And so that's really important to not piss people off with
Don't
middle of the night text message.
You probably aren't going to get that deal if you're waking them up at 5 a.m.
Right. Other things to make it really personable, and because if you're setting what time this should go out, like 9:43 or whatever a.m., I can say, good morning, right? That also does not seem automated. Somebody told me good morning. They know it's, obviously, but we're not analyzing all this stuff, trying to, is this automated or not? If it's like that, it definitely just doesn't give off the vibe, which is the important thing.
No, that's a huge nugget there. I think we chatted before recording, just it has to come off non-scripted. It has to come off, somewhat personable. I mean, it's not like they're the only person on the planet you're communicating with, but
right.
those are game changers as far as getting a response.
Yeah. And the messages that I like are typically ones like, hey, especially if this is a month or two out or something, I was in the area and thought about the property that I made an offer on. I was wondering, did you ever do anything with it?
That's great.
Stuff like, because they can say yes, no, whatever, it's just a quick response. And then, stuff like, and if they want to talk, they can start talking, about like being interested again or whatever. Or they might even say, you know what, I'm going to sell. Just give me, like, check back with me in a month. Right. Which is cool. It's like, update this lead. Let me, I could put in the notes, this person definitely check back. Right. Like, and call them. Because they were, and then, other things that are like, I really like that house, and I my company, we were a little bit short on investment properties this month, and so I was just hoping that maybe you still have that house. Would you, do you or something like that? Just things that's like, okay, he's not trying to be smooth. They're just telling me what's going on, right? Like,
right.
They want to buy more properties, and they would like to buy mine. We like the potential in that house. We'd like to see if you're still interested in selling it.
Give them kind of a reason why. And then the other thing I thought was good. This is actually a scenario where you don't necessarily want to ask those open-ended questions like you would, when you're, either interviewing someone or meeting them for the first time. I mean, the text and messaging, to get a response, you want to make it easy for them to respond versus, ask for them to, give you a narrative. It's just like, hey, are you still... Why
was it that you didn't sell to me? Well, I don't want to have to figure out all the reasons why and tell you, right?
Exactly. No, that's all really good stuff. I wanted to be respectful of your time, Danny. I appreciate, you jumping on, and lots of good nuggets that we'll have to unpack. And by the way, I will, be sharing where to find you. But what is the best? You want people to go to the website, or what's the best place to reach out to you?
Yeah, the best place is on Flipping Junkie. And then, also if on Instagram, I'm Danny Johnson SA for San Antonio, Danny Johnson SA. That's a good place to do that. And then Forefront CRM, we do have like a starter package, which is a single user. So if you're, more at the beginning stages, it's a lot less, it's a really reasonably priced plan at $99 a month. and you can have phones and all that stuff with that plan. And then we have a pro plan where you can have 6 users. If you need more, it's just $25 a month more over the six. And you get more phone numbers, more minutes and text and all that stuff included in that one. And right now we're actually having a holiday special. So depending on when you publish this, should still be going, but just use coupon code holiday75 and that'll give you 75% off on that first month.
That's great. Yeah, we'll get this out in the next week or so. So that goes through the end of the year.
Yeah, through the end of the year. I might extend it maybe another week or something for anybody that doesn't hear the podcast right away. So I'll keep it going as long as, probably about a week after the new year.
Okay, great. Perfect. Well, that was a lot of stuff. And this is, I think this makes a huge impact on the business. I've seen it, myself. By the way, I was a lead propeller, customer at one point. I've followed you on the podcast. I mean, I highly recommend the podcast. And by the way, wanted to mention at the beginning when you were talking about the book, I did get that book, many years ago, and there's some awesome stuff. In fact, my nephew is kind of slowly college kid, slowly getting into real estate, and so that was awesome. I actually shipped that with a couple other books to him to get
that's cool.
On his feet. Yeah. So well, look, I appreciate the time. We'll send everybody your way, and definitely. In fact, we have a lot of this comes up quite a bit as far as people I talk to, different investors and flippers, and especially on the new, not necessarily totally newbies, but maybe not, trying to scale their business. And I think this is just a no brainer for the cost and for what you get. It's just an absolute no brainer. So cool. Thanks again, Danny. We'll be talking soon.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good one.
Okay. You too.